For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss developments in Labour Union, the National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Do you think that Numsa's withdrawal of electoral support for the ANC will affect the party's performance on South Africa's May 7 elections?
It is not clear that it will have an effect on the elections because Numsa, while Numsa has said it will not campaign as Numsa and will not give money to the ANC, that doesn't mean that individual members of Numsa will vote for another party, nor does it mean that its individual members will withdraw from ANC branches and they may still help with the elections. However, it is a big blow because Numsa represents something like 15% of COSATU's membership and is one of the best organized unions in the federation. Its effect is, in my view, not primarily electoral. Its effect is that it is part of a process of breakdown of the ANC-led tripartite alliance. That Numsa, the strongest union in COSATU, wishes to withdraw support for ANC and possibly will withdraw from COSATU itself, may lead to a split in the federation. And we've seen in recent months that the federation has not been very successful with its campaigns. It is not operating in a unified way. You have 9 unions who have called for a conference. They've gone to court. The COSATU president still hasn't called this conference. So we have a situation of COSATU in disarray, the ANC in disarray, the SACP more or less swallowed up into the ANC, no longer an independent force. And this instability is a factor that must be worrying for all those who have supported the ANC, but it also must be worrying for those who want the country to be stable. Because if the leading force in government and their allies are fighting with one another and there's not stability, it's not good for the country and its future.
What are the wider consequences of Numsa's emerging position on the left of the ANC for the future of South African politics?
The way Numsa has presented its goals are, on the one hand, an attempt at opening up the political terrain by possibly breaking the stranglehold or the power of the ANC as the leading force. But the way it does it, in my view, is not in an open way, because its program is to call for a united front with a view to developing a workers' party, but it is based on Marxist-Leninism, and it is all very much related to the working class. Now, my sense is that we've been here before. In the 1980s, there used to be a lot of argument about whether we should be organized on the basis of the working class alone, or whether we should take into account that a range of interests need to find expression in politics. People who are not necessarily workers, but who don't have gender equality, the case of women who do not have freedom of sexual orientation, people who are without land, without work, they are not the usual trade unionists. And the type of Marxism that they advance, in my view, is very formulaic, just like their interpretation of the Freedom Charter is really to consign it into being a dead document with one interpretation for all time.
Now let us imagine that Numsa will contest the 2019 elections as a Labour Party. What are the pros and cons of this, and how will it affect South Africa as well as the ANC specifically?
Numsa is not intending to contest the elections. It's intending to be a catalyst towards the establishment of a workers' party. In other words, the Communist Party, which has previously been described or describes itself as a working class party, is regarded by Numsa as not serving that role. So they want to establish a different workers' party. It's very difficult to know what effect it would have. At this point in time, my belief is that the ANC continues to have overwhelming support, probably over 60% support amongst the electorate. Even the people who are protesting at the moment may very well, in many cases, be loyal ANC members. And I do not want to, I think to start a new party and gain support is very difficult. Now the EFF seems to be achieving that, and they may well take votes away from the ANC. But I wouldn't like to predict, the thing about a workers' party, if it has the weaknesses that I've referred to, that not everyone is a worker, not everyone employed worker, not everyone believes in Marxist-Leninism, what about the rest of those people do not want their vote? How do they get their vote?
You specifically note in your column that Numsa is silent on gender and sexuality. What might we assume from this?
Well, if you're silent on patriarchy, you are ignoring a central question in the Zuma era, because violence is predominantly male violence. And we have one of the elements of the crisis at the moment is a crisis of patriarchy, that you have chiefs through the TCB being given power over women and being intolerant also of freedom of sexual orientation. You have a crisis of rape on massive proportions in this country, rape which is manifesting itself in ways that we can't really explain, such as the rape of infants and things like this. So if you are silent on gender and silent thus on masculinities, you are actually ignoring the connection between gender and many of the problems that we face today, because much of the violence that people face on a day-to-day basis relates to patriarchy.
Now, going back to the Marxist-Leninism stance that you spoke about previously, do you think South Africa should then rather focus, or any new political party should focus rather on constitutionalism?
You see, you may well believe in Marxist-Leninism and constitutionalism. My argument is purely that as your starting point, you should not have something which has limited appeal, which Marxist-Leninism has, or let's say even environmental protection, where some people have to burn wood for their own heat. They will not be so keen on environmentalism as people who don't have that worry. Now, what I'm arguing is that people should unite around basic issues that they agree, such as respect for one another's dignity, provision of basic needs, and respect for the rule of law.
A wider situation.
Yes, and within that broad alliance, it would be possible to advance specific goals like socialism and Marxist-Leninism, etc., etc.
Thank you very much. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking about developments in Numsa.